Hampshire SAS Modular and Interim Assessments webinar. We have a few people that are still logging on, but we're just going to get through some of our logistical things. So here is your presentation team today. I am Heather Jenkins, and Ann Mordecai is going to be your presenter. And we're going to get right to work here. So the first thing I want to do is thank the New Hampshire DOE and the Department of Education for sponsoring this webinar series. And thank you to all of you for your dedication to students. Know that everybody here will be muted so we can't hear you or things like that. And please ask questions as we're going along. There are two sections. There's the Q&A section, which is where we're going to be asking you to post all of your questions, and then there's a chat, and the chat shows up for everybody, but where I'll be fielding most of the questions from is a Q&A portion. So if you could be sure to use that section, it would be super helpful. And then know that we will send you an email with the recording for this particular webinar, a link to the certificate, and the PowerPoint and some other documents you're going to be seeing. So we're going to just turn off our video right now so that we're not distracting. Also, we wanted to send you in the direction for the Department of Education. There's the New Hampshire Learns Remotely.com. This is a website that has a lot of really useful information for families and educators and students. They have links to sites for wellness programs, food and nutrition, and federal guidelines. There's a calendar of all the upcoming events for them, a lot of COVID information, and also links to the other New Hampshire Department of Education sponsored webinars. Now I'll turn it over to Ann.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Hi, everyone. I love Mr. Rogers. I love how calming he can be for kids. And I think right now this is a really helpful reminder that things are so stressful right now that being kind is really helpful for everybody if we're kind to each other.
And kind to yourself.
Thank you. Yes, and kind to yourself. There's actually some questions already being sent in. I will answer them as we go along. These are the questions actually I'm going to cover as we go. So I will cover them, but please write in anything that pops in your mind that you have a question about. Overall, I'm going to answer these questions. How do you administer the tests in person and remotely? What kind of setups do you need to do? And how do you find and use the results? There were a lot of questions that were sent in with the registration. So I have them listed, some of them listed at the end that I might forget to cover as we go through. I just will check them at the end to make sure I've covered them all. And I will answer questions throughout the webinar. Heather will tell me when there's a question. And then I'll check to make sure they're all answered. I already said that. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about Cambium. That's the new company that's supporting the portal. And then how do we administer the test? Same as the questions. We're going to talk about TIDE, some things you need to do in that system, look at what the results look like, and then wrap up. So Cambium is a new company. They have made some changes to the system so that we can do this remotely. So it allows for remote instruction. We can schedule tests in advance. So if I know I'm going to be testing on Monday, I could actually schedule it right now. And we can assign tests as assignments and assignments, it says, but we can assign these tests as assignments and send them home, and students can do them whenever they want without a test administrator there. It works with Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Safari, although I have not tried it with, I've only tried it with Chrome, but they're telling me that it goes with all of them. Anybody who is proctoring the test in person can also proctor it remotely at the same time even. Test administrators or TAs will be able to see and talk to their students, and it says in the future, but actually you can do that now. Students cannot see or talk to each other during the tests if you're using this remote this new piece of it. And Cambium will not be, they're not going to collect any of the videos of people talking to each other or any notes from it or anything. So it's private that way. these are the different ways that you can administer the test. You can do it in person, the way we always have done it. That reminds me, I want to start this poll. So hold on before I go into there. I'm going to launch this poll and have everybody answer it while I'm waiting for a second. Just want to know how many people have done this before. Okay, sorry, I was on mute so you wouldn't hear me talking. Actually, Heather and I are in the same room. So most people have given it and remember most of it. Some people don't remember it, and a few people have never given it. Don't worry, if you've never given it, it's not that hard. If you've given it before, it has changed, but not that much. So thank you for doing that, for filling that out. So the different ways that you can administer this, you can do it in person, the way we always have, which means nothing to the people who've never given it before. You could do it remotely with a secure browser. You can do it remotely using a URL. So even though they're remote, they don't need that secure browser. And you can do a fully remote with the proctoring built in. I would say right now, don't use the secure browser. Just use the URL, but we'll get into that. I want to remind you that oh, why do I have this here, this picture here? Oh, I know why, but you can't see it. Oh, yes, you can. I just want to remind you that you can call us, and I've got my number at the end, our email and number at the end, but you can also contact the Cambium people. And if you click on contact us at the bottom of the home page and the 9-box page, which I will show you, up their number will come and you'll have their number and their email address. I would say if it's something urgent, call them right away and they answer right away. If it's something that can wait till tomorrow, then you could send them an email and they'll get back to you by tomorrow. They're very fast, they're very helpful. So definitely use them, but you can also call us. So how do we do this? This is the portal. This is the URL that we used to use. This is the new one. You can use the old one for a little while longer and it will send you over to the new one, but you might as well start practicing typing in the New Hampshire portal, cambiumasked.com. And that brings you to the home page. This is the home page. I very rarely do much other than I almost every single time use this. Once in a while, I have downloaded the secure browser. And this year I've been using a piece that's in here and I'll show you. And that's it. I don't know what this is for. I don't know what that's for. No, I don't know. But the other part is there are always tons of messages on here that you can find. But the first thing you're going to do normally is click on test administration. And that brings you to this page that I call the 9-box page. I'm going to lay them out differently so that we can see them. And I want to go over each of them kind of quickly, but I want you to understand what they're all for. So the test administrator, oh, it's changed. I'm going to go back, I forgot. It's changed. We used to have, if you used it last year and you used it with the modulars, we used to have the online reporting system for the summative reports. That's now gone. And then we had the airways for the modular and interim reports. Those are both gone. And there's a new one called reporting. So if you want to get reports, it's easy. Just go to reports. And then there's also a remote TA certification course. If you've done this before, every year you have to go through the certification course. This year, you only have to do this one. You're supposed to do both of them, but I have discovered that if you just do this one, you get in. So you have to do this remote TA certification course before you can use the system. So do that as soon as you can. And I should have waited to tell you that. But so test administration is where you will go when you want to administer the test. And I want to show you something that makes it a little confusing. We'll go back. Whoops. one more back. On this page, it's also test administration. On home, you click on test administration, and then on the 9 box, you click on test administration again. So that can sometimes be a little bit confusing. Sorry, I gotta go through all these again. So test administration, that's where you actually administer the test. Reporting is where you get the results for the summative, modulars, and the interims. This TA practice and training site is for test administrators to practice and train, but you actually can just set them up live and practice that way. So this, you don't really have to go there. This is the certification course that you must take. This is one that you can take. TIDE is where you do anything that has to do with students or teachers or people. If you want to update students' testing grade, so you want them to take a grade level of interim or modular that isn't their grade, like you have a 3rd grade student who is taking, you think should take a 5th grade test, you can set that up. Or an 8th grade student that you think should take a 3rd grade test, you can set that up. This year, they are set up for the prior year. So if you're giving this year for the interims, you're giving the test for the grade that the student was in last year, and that's already set up. Is there a question?
There's just a question about the TA certification. So this particular person has the 9 box page, but none of them are able to access the remote TA certification course. And she's wondering if that's true for others or why they wouldn't be able to access that.
So she doesn't have a picture of that? So I'm asking that.
It just says they're not able to access it.
Okay, do you not have a picture of it? If you could send that.
Okay.
And then I can address that in a second. Oh,
She says she has.
and when so if you click on it, nothing happens. I'm sorry for a problem, but you should be able to click on that and you'll go right to the certification process. If that's not happening, we can work on that after. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's an error message.
Okay,
So.
if you stay on after, we can talk about that. So TIDE is where you're going to do anything people related. If you want to print test tickets for your students, or you want to update accommodations or the grade level of the test, I said, or set up a roster, that happens in TIDE. Yeah. Assessment viewing application is my favorite place. If you click on there, you can see all the questions for all the modular tests and the interims, actually. The modular tests have 9 or 10 questions each, except for science. And they're in they go question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can see the exact questions the students are going to get. The best thing about them is that you'll look at those and go, oh my God, I don't teach that. And then you'll say, oh, well, I guess I'm supposed to be teaching that. So you've got to readjust your instruction and realign your scope and sequence sometimes to fit in some things that you didn't know were standards for your grade. Then there's an inbox over here, which is mail. I've never gotten any in this little box. Nobody likes me, I guess. I've never used it. I've never sent one. I've never gotten one there. So I would just ignore that box. And then resources. This is a good one, and there are a lot of them to show. So right here, I'm just going to click there and go. Test administration. I don't know why they're not blue. Usually they are.
Before you go too
Yeah.
far, somebody's asking, how is TIDE populated?
TIDE is populated by the DOE. You don't have to do anything with that. So it's through your I4C system. So I'm on the 9 box page, and I'm going to click on Test Administration Resources. And these are a bunch of choices that I have. General information for teachers is a good one. There are these performance level descriptors. So if I'm looking at what is a 6th grade ELA, here's the first standard, or a first standard, reading literature, 6th grade, the first one. If I want to know how students are being scored on these tests, highly proficient students will need to do this. Below proficient students will be here. So these are rubrics for each of the tests, the math and the ELA. They're really handy. You can find writing rubrics. So here's the grade 3 through 5 informative and explanatory rubric. This is how you get 4 points, 3 points, 2 points. I mean, you know how a rubric works. They don't necessarily match the rubrics that you're using in your school. So you might want to at some point look at those and make sure that what you're doing in your school is matching these rubrics in some way, because these are the standards. These are aligned to the standards. I'm going to go back to the resources. There's a vocabulary list for ELA. That's a nice thing. This is for testing. What else is in here? There's manuals. So how do you get parent reports? How do you use Tide? How does this one I keep wanting to read? I haven't gotten there yet. This is how is the writing auto scored? I keep wanting to read that. I've got to get to it. Accommodations guide, you might need it. Lists the different accommodations and who they're for, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of stuff out here. So take a look at some point. I'm going to go back. I think I can just go back to yes. Okay, good. So that's the 9-box page. Do we have any questions for the overall? Any more? Okay, keep
There's
going.
a tip for how we might be able to get that test administration, but we can talk
Oh,
about that.
okay. No, talk about it. I was going to say, just
okay.
log off and log back on again. Get out of.
That's sort of,
Yeah.
so she, somebody had said that they had an error message early on and they cleared the browser
Cookies.
cache
Yeah.
and reloaded it in the window, and the certification course became available.
Okay.
So they cleared the cache.
All right. If you want some help with that, you can stay on and I can show you how to do that. That's a good idea. So now look, we're going to get right into how do you administer these tests remotely and in person. There's my little picture. Again, you're going to go to the portal. It's the same place. You can use either one, but start using Cambium. And hopefully I'm going to be able to do this live. I have no idea. Usually these are blue. I don't know what happened to my screen. So this is home page. If I ever want to get back here, I just click on home. I'm going to go to test administration and then test administration. At this point, if you're not logged on, you have to log on. And it's probably going to send me an email that I have to put in the link. Oh, hold on 1 sec. Sorry about that. Ends up in my junk. And you might, I've seemed to be getting this a lot in the past couple of days. I don't know why. Probably because I cleaned out my cache. Would that be it? And right now, this is the page you come to. It doesn't look anything like it used to look, but it still sort of works the same. These are all sessions that I started today to help different people in different schools. And this is what your first screen could look like. These are all active sessions. You can see the date from 10/20 to 10/20. So these are all just for today. Here's one that goes until tomorrow. They'll disappear tomorrow at the end of the night, this one. Upcoming sessions are where you can schedule something to start today and last for a week, or start tomorrow and last for 3 days. I'll show you how to do that. And at home assignments, I've got 2 of them going right now, are sessions that you start, and you can, again, start them for today to go for a week or just for 2 days or whatever length of time you want. But they'll happen at home. They can happen at school also. You'll get a URL, but you don't have to be there when they're taking this test. You don't have to monitor them while they're taking the test when you give them an assignment. This active session, I can start an active session, and that will start right now. It'll be exactly the way it always has been. So as an example, I'm going to use the upcoming session. There's nothing in there because I have nothing upcoming. If I had one that was going to start tomorrow, it would be here. But right now I have nothing. Schedule a session. From when to when? Let's say I want to start it tomorrow and I want it to go for 2 weeks. We can't go more than 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. I would then click next, but for the sake of not cluttering up my system, I'm actually just going to set it up for today. But you can set it up for any range you want for 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks. Click on next. Then you have to choose the test. What we're working on is the modulars, the interims. So If you have a plus sign, click on the plus sign. If I'm a 4th grade teacher and I want to give them the 3rd grade math, I can click there.
Can we just make sure that people are aware that they are giving the prior year's interim? There have been lots of questions and people not really clear about that.
So students are going to take the test for the grade in which they were in last year, the grade they were in last year. 5th grade students take the 4th grade tests. 3rd graders will not take an interim right now, or they don't have to take an interim right now. So I can set this particular session up just to be math, or I can add the reading and the writing. There are different ways. You might want to ask some questions about that because there are different benefits to each way. So if anybody's thinking things right now, you can ask some questions about that. I'm going to get rid of this one and I'll save that one. I'm going to call this Math ELA 3rd, but it's for my 4th grade students. Right now, I'm going to recommend that you say in person, whether you're doing it remotely or not. Keep it in person. The remote or hybrid is working. It was just installed last week, so there have been a couple issues with it. And the remote or hybrid is the one where you can see your student and talk to the student while they're taking the test. You'll get a little picture of them, and I can show you it, but it's not working super well yet. So I would choose in person and then do a Zoom with them. So save the session. This is the test reason. You've got all these different reasons. The test doesn't care what you pick. You can pick fall when it's spring. You can pick spring when it's summer. It doesn't make any difference. The only thing that matters is if you've got a team of teachers, say you're one of 4 5th grade teachers, you all should pick the same test reason. And that's for reporting reasons, and I'll show you that later, what happens if you don't pick the same test reason. So I'm just going to leave it unassigned and click OK. And this is it. If you remember from before, if you've given it before, we used to just get that test session, put it up on the board. Now you have this link. So here's the link. Here's the URL. You're going to send home to your students, or you're going to, they're probably not going to want to type it in. If you have Google Classroom or however you get information to your students, you will put this in the link. You will send this to them that way. I'm going to show you what happens now once I have this link. So I'm going to copy this link and close it. Oh, my session's gone. First time that happened to me, I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? It's an active session now. So it's Math and ELA 3rd. Oh, I can't remember what the link is. Here it is. You can get it again. So you're safe. I copied it and I want to put it, I'm now a student. I want to put it in this, put it right in here. Whoops, I gotta get rid of that. I can't, it won't start until I actually join it. I need to join the session. Now it looks exactly like it did last year. Here's the session number. I typed in the URL. It ends with that session number, 805712T. 805712T. So that's how they get, that's how they're all connected. I gotta move that out of the way. So nothing's happening right now. I want my students to log on. I have a test student here. Yep.
Somebody needs you to repeat the steps again. So
To set up a session. Okay, I will. I will after I get the student on so you can see what happens. So the student's going to sign on and it says, is this you? If it is, you can click on yes. And then since I picked those 2 tests, they're both going to show up. That can be confusing sometimes. So you might want to split it up and just put, if your students are going to take math on Wednesday, just set up math on Wednesday. And if they're going to take the ELA on Thursday, set up the ELA in a different session for Thursday. You can put the ELA in, it's easy to put the ELA and the writing in one session because they can't do the writing until the ELA is finished. So even though it would look like they have 2, they can't access the writing one.
And just out of curiosity, how much time should they, students, they think going to be taking the test? This is specifically for 5th grade, but just in general, are there any time limits on it?
There are no time limits. You can take as much time as you want. It's taking kids about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. If you have a student who's going to be super studious and try and solve every single question and get every single answer right, it might take a while longer. If you've got some students who are just clicking through, they might be done in 5 minutes. If you've got some students who, chances are they're not going to be able to answer all the questions. So it probably won't. There are 30 questions. It would take me longer than an hour to do 30 questions because that's not very long for each question. But an hour and 15, hour and a half should be enough.
For each.
For the writing, I mean, for the ELA and the math, the reading and the math. The writing would be another half an hour, maybe. It varies, but it's around there. But there are about 30 questions. So my student now has to pick the one. But let's say, okay, pick the math one. So she picks the math and now she's waiting. So back to my screen. And I'll refresh it. And there it is. She's waiting. I'm going to approve her. She's clicked on the math test. That's good. I want her to take the math test. If she had clicked on the reading and I wanted her to take the math, I would click X and say no, and she'd have to log out and log back in again. So I'm going to click that. I'm waiting for her information. I'm going to go back to the student. It started. This is what the student sees. Begin test now. And there she is. She's into the test. There are things you might want to show them, and I'll talk about that in a minute because there was a question about that. I'm going to go back and show you how to set up a session. So this session is running. My student's going to get in there eventually, and I want to set up another session. So I'm going to go to Test Administration, Upcoming Sessions, Schedule a Session, choose the date range, whatever you want. Click on Next. This time, let's say I'll pick the reading. I'll pick a reading test for 4th grade and a writing test for 4th grade. So you can see the two I've chosen. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to keep it in person for now. If you're brave, you can try the remote one with your students. That's fine. It's just if computers aren't totally updated, it might not work. But it's definitely, if you have a student who has a high frustration level or low, high tolerance for frustration, try it because it is kind of cool when it works. But save the session. Keep it. I like to just keep them all unassigned. Click OK. Here's my URL. You give that to the student. When you're ready to go, you click on Join. And then your session has started and your students can log in. Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else do I want to show here? I think I want to show Tide, but I can't show much of that here. There's one, I want to go back to home. Somebody sent in a question about what do we do if we don't have time for training for or practice for the test? If you mean practice for the test, as in the content of the test, I wouldn't bother doing that. This is really, we just want to know what the students remember from last year. So if they don't remember it, they don't remember it. And if you want to jog their memory a little, that's fine, but you don't have to. But for your 3rd grade or your current 4th grade students who never took a modular or an interim last year, you probably are going to want to do some training with them. And one of the things you can do is click here and then practice and training tests. And then practice and training tests again. They won't practice logging on this way, but they will practice getting into the session. So log on as a guest. Select the grade, whatever grade you want to show them. And then you can practice whatever kind of test you want. So let's say I want to practice an ELA test and just show them some things that you can do. This is actually, I don't know why the students get this. It's mostly to show them the different accommodations that may be set up for them, but just select it. Then you have to do this for ELA, you have to play this. Everybody remember that sound? And then I could play the sound in the video. Then you have to play this.
This text is being read aloud.
And you have to say, I could hear it. And then you continue. And begin test. This is an ELA test. It's a sample of an ELA test. There are different things that your students need to have to do. One of them is how do I go to the next question? So they need to learn to click next. They can also go this way if they're farther along. They can't go ahead yet. They can make this the
Screen.
screen, the reading part, the prompt bigger, or the passage bigger. They can make, oops, that's the same one. They can make the questions bigger. So they need to know that. They also, we tell the kids to read the questions first, so they might want to read through the questions. And then, okay, they want to highlight something. If they highlight that and click away, it goes away. But they can highlight, come up here and highlight. They can zoom in and out, so they can just play around with this version. And then at the very end, when they're done, they can actually, there's another button will come up and it'll say submit. If they don't submit, you won't get their score. So you want them to submit. So that is how you would test it with students. I am going to get out of this.
Just a quick question. Somebody is wondering if there's a place where they can find the directions to set up a test, like if there's a
Yes.
manual or.
In the resources section, so back there, test administration and test administration resources, you can find a way to, you can find the rules about setting it up or the pathway to set things up. You can also, when you'll get this video, the video of this webinar, and you can just do it step by step, like run this and then stop it, run 30 seconds, stop it, and try a piece, run 30 seconds and stop it. And you can try it all you want. You can practice with a student ID if you're doing the modulars. Just practice it. It doesn't, there's no way you're going to hurt anything. So just click around. So I'm going back to the PowerPoint. Do we have any questions on that part? Because I'm going to go to Tide now. Okay. So Tide, you do have to go to Tide to administer these interim assessments. And there are a couple things you have to do in Tide and a couple things you can do in Tide. One of the things you need to do is print test tickets and get those to the parents. They can be emailed. That's something that the DOE has said it's okay. I'll show you how to do that. Accommodations have to be set up for any of your students. Somebody in your school has been doing both of those things for 4 years, because for SBAC and for SAS, we've had to do both of those things. So somebody in your school knows how to do that. But I'll show you. And then also, if you, like I said earlier, if you want to give a 3rd grade student an 8th grade test, you would have to change the access for different grades of tests. For this test, the interim, that's already been done. So if your students are in 4th grade, they can now take the 4th grade test and the 3rd grade test. So printing test tickets. Every student needs a test ticket. Click on test administration. Like I said earlier, 99% of the time I'm going to test administration. Once I'm there, I go to Tide. Oh yeah, I didn't last time. I changed the screen. I didn't move that down. So I will do that before I put the PowerPoint up. Here you're going to go to Tide and then print test ticket. And then you're going to print it from the student list. Underneath there, it says print from roster list. Most schools at this point in the year don't have roster lists. You have students in the system, but they're not put into class rosters. If they were, you could just print from the roster lists. But right now you can only print from the student list. So I click on print from student list, and then I select the grade. I want to print the tickets for 5th grade. And then I search for them, view them, and here they are. Here are all my students. I can pick a few students to print, or I can pick them all to print. So if I click on this up here, I will print all of them. Click that little button that's a printer. And then this one says print my 2 tickets, even though I hit selected all. It should say 173, but this is basically what it's going to look like. So you're going to print all these tickets. Then print, you can change the size here. 5x2 is generally okay for everybody. 3x2 is a little bit bigger. Some people are doing 1-to-1, like each student gets their own page. If you don't have too many students, that's okay. But when you click print, that gets downloaded to your downloads folder. You open it up, and this is kind of what it looks like. If you've done it before, this is, they've always looked like this. They'll look like this forever. Who knows? The only information that you need to give them is their first name, which of course they know, and this SSID. So if you can just send that information home, that's great. If you want to send these cards home, that's great. If their kids are ever in school, you can tape them to their backs or tape them somewhere so they can always get them. If their name is spelled incorrectly, they need to spell it incorrectly here. And I saw one yesterday, a child who had, his first name was actually 2 different names. And he put in the first part because that's what they called him. And since his test ticket had both names, he had to put in both names. If your name, like one girl, her name was Margaret, but they call her Maggie. She said, well, my name is Maggie, but it's really Margaret. So I said, well, you have to type in whatever's on the ticket. So you might want to send the student's name home. Question? Yep. That's printing test tickets. That's the whole thing. Now, if you're going to set up accommodations, again, you go to Tide and then Students. And that opens up and it's View or Export Students. And you come to this exact same screen where you're going to select people. So you can select you can select the grade. You can put a first name in or a last name. You don't have to put in both. The name, if the first name is John, you might get a whole bunch of Johns back, but you don't have to put them both in and eat still. And then search. And here's your list of students. So, okay, which one did I want to put in the accommodations for? Oh yeah, this one. So I click on that little pencil and it opens up. This is the beginning of the accommodations page. And your special ed teachers have done this before. It's in the students' IEPs. If they have an IEP, there are certain accommodations that they can get. And actually those are called accommodations. Designated supports are supports that students can get whether they have an IEP or not, but you have to have a team of adults, which could just be 2 people, determining that. And then there's universal accommodations, universal supports that everybody gets, like dictionary or calculator when it's available. For the test in the fall, you only have to put in the embedded accommodations. You don't have to put in the non-embedded. And what I mean by that is, if you want the system to do something, like you want the system to have a backlight, which I'm not sure that's an option, but you want it to have a read aloud, you want the system text to speech or speech to text, you want to have larger fonts, that's embedded in the system. If it's a scribe or a person reading aloud or a separate setting, that's non-embedded. You don't have to put that in right now. You will for the summative, but not for this interim. So only embedded accommodations have to be checked. And you find the accommodations, scroll through, find the accommodations and turn them on or off. This is where I was talking about if you want to change the grade, if you want your 3rd grader to take an 8th grade test, he or she will show up with 3rd grade. You can change it so that she can take all of the tests if you want, or just pick a couple, but you have to change that if you want them to access other grades.
Except for the interims, it's done for you.
Thank you. Yes, except for the interims are done for you so that every student now, except for 3rd grade, can take the test for the grade that they were in last year. And don't forget to save because it doesn't happen. Okay.
So just a quick couple of questions about the test tickets.
Yeah.
If a child's or student's name is spelled incorrectly, can that be corrected in I4C?
Yes.
Okay.
If your student's name is spelled incorrectly, then you should go fix it in your student system, and then that will get fed into I4C. Because you don't want to have, that's not nice to have students' names spelled. I've seen a lot of times where the names are in backwards, like their first name is their last name and their last name is their first name. So those are you do want to fix those.
Okay, and then how do you email the test tickets?
Well, there are a couple ways. You can screen print each one, which if you have 3,000 students, that won't be very easy. And if you have a screen print, then you'd have a PDF of it. You could send it to the student or the parents. You can also download a file that will have the student's name and the SSID, and you can just copy and paste that into an email. If your students are totally remote, it's going to take some effort. If you send them home packages every now and then, you can just stick it in there.
Mhm.
So,
There's also, if you did choose the single page to be able to download it as a PDF, then you can, there's PDF splitters so that you can email those to
Yeah, you could
specific
do that.
parents if you're just dealing with your, like a smaller group of kids.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got tons of kids, the easiest way is to print them and hand them to them. But if your kids are never in and nobody comes in to pick up any materials, then you will have to email the information. Okay. I'm going to go into what do the results look like. I mean, that's the whole purpose. Why are we doing this if we're not going to look at the results? And I know some schools right now are saying we're not going to look at the results, but it seems like if your students are going to go to the effort of taking this test, it would be nice to at least glance at the results. So test administration again, and then you're on the 9-box page, click on reporting. And this is what it looks like at first. You get all the interim assessments. So this would be a elementary school, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. All the interim scores blopped into one. These are the low, the middle, and the high. These are benchmark reading, low, middle, high. If there were summatives, they would also be here. If there were interim reading, interim math, and I think, I'm not sure yet about the writing, how that's going to come out, but you'll find out when they do it. You won't get ELA scores until they're done with the writing. So they do have to do the writing. So we're going to look at here at the interims. Click on that and opens all your interims. So these are all the interim tests that have been taken. This was obviously last year. You can see the date. Test reasons are all over the place a little bit. Interim 5th grade, 3rd, you can see all these. This is the grade of the student at the time. No, I think it's the grade of the test. The test reason, the number of students who took the test, the average score, which means nothing to me. I don't know what this score is. I know I can tell one's higher or lower, but it doesn't mean anything to me. So I don't even look at it. Sorry. And then this is, you can see how your students did in 5th grade, how they did in 3rd grade by looking at the color coding here and the percentages and the number of students. But what I want to show you, remember I told you about the test reason, this is the 3rd grade interim math and also 3rd grade interim math. And with 34 students and 33 students, I would say that is 2 classes and this is 2 classes. So there's 4 teachers or 4 classes of 3rd grade. Half of the teachers, or 2 of them, chose pretest and half of them chose unassigned. So as an administrator, I can't see how they did overall. I can only see one group at a time, which is okay, but I would rather as administrator see them all. I can see teacher scores on another page, so I don't necessarily want to break them up by teacher yet. I want them all together. That's the reason you pick the same test reason. So that now we're going to go look at the one that I'll show you the results. We're going to look at the interim 5th grade. So it was a 5th grade, but it was a 4th grade test. We called that. Unassigned, 84 students, so it's probably the whole grade. Average score, again, means nothing to me. This is the date they took it, and I click on the test. And up will come this. It'll give my school, my district actually will be one of them, my school, and then by teacher, if you have rosters set up. If you've already set up rosters, you'll get it by teacher. And here you can see 84 students, 15, 17, actually that doesn't add up to it, but that's okay. Must be a few more down below. 15 out of 16 took it, 17 out of 17, etc. Scores, again, which they don't mean anything to me. And then these are, for math, these are the clusters on the Common Core standards. For math 3 through 5, these are the domains. You get geometry scores, measurement and data scores, fraction scores, numbers and operations, base 10, operations and algebraic thinking. 6 through 8 math are things like equations and expressions, or expressions and equations, rates, ratios and proportions, number systems, 8th grade functions. So whatever the Common Core standard domains are, is how this will be broken out. And yeah, I got all those cute little arrows. Yeah, let's look at the geometry. So click on geometry and that opens up. What you see is Mrs. Smith's class, this is how they did. Mr. Jones, this is how they did. So you can see the geometry scores for each class. And that's the same for the other domains also. But we really want to, for this test, we want to dig in a little deeper. Just to know that in geometry I did well, that my class did well, or my grade did well, isn't really enough information. I want to dig down by student. So if I click on student, I can see how Johnny did. I can't, for the interims, I can't see how my whole class did at once. I can only see one student at a time. And that's because each student gets a different set of questions. So question 13 for Johnny isn't the same as question 13 for Hazel. So we can only see one at a time. So let's see, Johnny, it said he's approaching, which is the middle, but look how many he got wrong. And that we don't even see all the questions, but to me, that's not approaching, that's low. So one of the things you have to be careful about is if it says approaching, your student could still be very low. So you might want to look and see the percentage of questions they got correct or incorrect. And to do that, you have to download the file to an Excel spreadsheet. But for this, for each individual student, I can actually look and go, okay, question 18, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is the question. All rectangles are squares. Okay, how did Johnny answer that? I can click right there and see how Johnny actually answered that question. So it's really helpful to be able to see any misconceptions that your kids might have, especially your lower kids, obviously, because if they get it all right, it's not a misconception. You could check each one separately. You can figure out what the students remember from last year and what they don't. So it can be very helpful. We also are now able to get this report that's just like the summative report, or similar to the summative report. You get an overall score. It's a level 3. 2542 was his score, which again, doesn't mean anything to me other than I can tell it's a level 3. You get a Lexile score, and they will be connecting that to reading to books, or I'm not sure exactly what, but I'm going to take a webinar on this and learn it for next week, actually. Achievement level, grades. If you scroll down a page, so 2.5, he had a 2.542. The state was below him. His district was below him, and he did better than his school. So that's good. I mean, as a parent, I like to know that at least. If you scroll down another page, you can see a collection of different assessments they've taken and when they've taken them, and see how he's improved. You can also get, how did he do in language standards? He was above. You can see where he fell on the average compared to the average. And then you can also look and see how he did on standards. So this word meanings is a standard, determine intended or precise meanings of words. He got that one right. So if I find another word meaning, he got that one right. So probably he's pretty good with word meanings. Let's say I want to say key details. Key details. He got that one right. He got that one right. So he's pretty good with that. So you can, if you've got a student of concern, you can go through and look at how they did with standard by standard.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
When are the test results available?
The test results are available when the student logs off, after he submits them, except for the ELA is not available until the writing is complete. So they should, I say immediately, but it might take 5 minutes. But basically immediately, they're ready right away. Do you have any more questions before I?
Just one about accommodations.
Okay.
Just in general, so this person sets up the rosters and accommodations for special education students and things like that as per their IEPs or 504s. It says, can any teacher add accommodations? And they're thinking that would basically make the test not as valid if the teachers can add accommodations, even though they're not in there, like speech. If the text-to-speech were enabled and doing a reading comprehension is being assessed.
You can't, text-to-speech doesn't work for reading. So you don't have to worry about that. That won't happen. But your teachers, if they have access to the student, can change the accommodations. They probably wouldn't, but they can. And that's only if a roster is set up so that they have access. Otherwise, they don't have access to the students, and they won't be able to see the results either. So eventually you do want to put rosters in there.
And then just to sort of circle back, it says the test session, how long of a test session should we schedule? That can be scheduled for any length of time up to 2 weeks, correct?
You can schedule it for 1 day or up to 2 weeks. You can't schedule it for hours. It's just 1 day. You schedule for the whole day, and it's active until 11:59 and 59 seconds, actually. So I would suggest that you just set it up for a week, and that way you can pick up any kids who didn't finish or who are absent or didn't figure out how to use it. There's no harm in having, like you saw that I have a whole bunch of sessions going at the same time. Doesn't really make any difference. Nobody's using them. Nobody can get to them if I don't send them a link.
And again, the students take, depending on the student, about an hour and 15 is what
Yeah.
we're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The writing might be, half an hour, unless they love to write and keep going. More? No, okay. So we have looked at the overview of the system. We talked about remote and local testing or in-person testing. Remember, choose that in-person button when even if they're remote. We looked at some of the reports, and we talked about printing test tickets, setting up accommodations, and changing access to grade levels if you want to do that. Before we end, I want to go over some of the questions that were sent to me. I think somebody asked this, can I print out directions? And I said, if you go to the resources page on the 9-box page, you can find directions on how to administer these tests. You can also look at this video and just, run through 30 seconds and try it, run through 30 more seconds and start and stop. Are we allowed to email? Yes. How do we suggest we administer the test remotely? What we suggest is if you use Zoom or Google Meets or whatever communication tool you're using, that you do it that way. You can set up different rooms for the students to go into if you want them all to be separate. I would turn off your chat so that they can't chat in between each other, but that's the way I would suggest that you do it with Zoom or Google Meets. If you have a read aloud student, you probably have to go in a separate room, and that student will have to share their screen. If you have a scribe student, a student who needs a scribe, you can't do that remotely. So you could have the students tell the person who's scribing for him or her, just have them talk and you scribe on a piece of paper or type it into a computer, but and then just hand it to the teacher, and the teacher can get a sample of the student's writing, but you can't enter it into the system for them, so it won't be corrected like the other ones. We talked about this quickly. What would I recommend if you don't have time to practice the test? So for the kids who are 4th graders, they've never taken this test, or any of your 5th graders that came from out of state or for some reason didn't take the test last year. If you don't have time to practice the test, I would say just monitor them closely and help them. They're going to want to know how to go to the next question. They're going to want to know how to expand or type in answers. So you just have to help them as they go on the test. Parent permission letters. Where do I find that? Whoever wrote that in obviously had done the remote certification. We don't in New Hampshire, we don't need the parent permission letter. That certification process was written for anybody who uses the system. We don't need it. Students who still get accommodations. Why is this still being done? How reliable, factual, and usable will the results be? Well, that's the question, right? It would be great if we could convince parents, if you're doing this remotely, that the purpose of this test is to find out what your students know, what your children know. If you help them and they get right answers when they don't know the answer, we'll just assume the student knows it and we'll bypass that part of the student's education. It'd be great if we could tell parents that and get them to do it. the results will be usable because there will be some students who did it on their own, and you'll be able to see their results and how they answered questions. The state, I think they're gonna look at it and go, oh, interesting. There's not a lot that they can do with it. So I think they'll look at it, they'll probably compare it to end of year from other years, but you can't compare it really apples to apples. So, but they will look at it, but I don't think there's not much they can do with it. So
They've been pretty clear that it's not for
it
accountability.
is not for accountability. That is true. It is not. No, you don't have to do science, although it's not a bad idea. Yes, 6th graders have to take the 5th grade test. 8th graders have to take the 7th grade test. 9th grade does not have to take the 8th grade test, but you should. You probably want to know what your 9th graders know and don't know. So yes, I would say that. And again, I'm going to remind you that you can call or email Cambium. Just click on the contact us at the bottom and up comes their information. Heather, you want?
Just a quick, a couple of questions before we go
Okay.
into this. So has the state given a deadline for completion?
They said October 31st, but you certainly can bleed into November. Don't worry about that. Just take your time. Have your student take their time.
And then so the recording is going to be available tomorrow afternoon. You all will get an email. So that was one of the questions. And then the other one was just about the different sections of the math and language arts test. So they're each, the math is just one math test.
Yep.
The ELA is one ELA test, again, about 60 minutes, but then the writing is another 30.
So the ELA is one reading and one writing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's it.
Okay.
Okay, so some webinars. We have other webinars coming up in the next month or so. You can go to the webinars and workshops, and it brings up this page here with all the different webinars. So we have coming up in, let's see.
Guess we've already done those. Yeah.
PLC. Next week we have the PLC protocols, binders, and data cycles coming up tomorrow. And then next week we have PLC, identify your standards and create a SMART goal. And then using the results from the interim assessment starts next week.
We are going to have call-in hour tomorrow, Thursday and Friday from 8 to 9. How can I get that link? I guess we should send it with tomorrow's. That'll be too late. How can we get that link? We will get that link to you. If you want to join between 8 and 9, I'm just going to be there and I'll answer any questions that you have. If you can get that link, and Heather, and put it in the chat, is that possible? You'll have to wait. You can't log off yet. I'll just go on with this then. If you want to look at any of the webinars that we've had in the past since March, since we were ejected from our schools, you can go to our website, and there's at the bottom of those pages we were just looking at is a list of all of the assessments that we've given. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. You can get the all the materials for them at these links, and you can get the videos for them on YouTube if you go to the Demonstrate Success channel and just go to the channel, and you'll see them all. There are many, many, many of them. We also are on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. So there's lots of information you can get from going to these. We have a great person who's our social media, Chris. He's our social media person, and he puts in tips and articles and savings for teachers and all sorts of things. So these are great places to go to find information. And this is us. This is my phone number. If you call me, I might not answer because I don't recognize it, but if you leave me a message, I will call you back. You can email either of us and we will get back to you.